We're now streaming live on YouTube.
Okay, 2-minute warning, guys. Everybody ready? Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Ms. Silbaugh, do we have a quorum today?
Would help if I unmute. Yes, we do, Chair. Participating in the meeting today are yourself as Chair, Vice Chair Lobby, Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, Commissioner Conklin, and we are anticipating Commissioner Rouse to join us momentarily. But 4 is our quorum, so we may proceed. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Now we will turn to our safety message from Mr. Braxton. Mr. Braxton?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Detecting the signs of fatigue is critical to maintaining a safe and productive workplace. When we're tired, our reaction times slow, our judgment becomes impaired, and we're more likely to make mistakes. These errors can lead to injuries, damage to equipment, or even life-threatening situations. It is essential to recognize the signs of fatigue, such as yawning, difficulty concentrating, or inability, and take action before it has an even greater effect on performance. Creating a culture in which it's okay to talk and seek support is key. Take regular breaks, get enough sleep, and speak up. Remember, asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. That's the safety message for today.
Thank you, Mr. Braxton. We will now move on to the minutes from our last meeting. Commissioner Farrar Dyke, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The minutes of the August 5th, 2025 meeting were posted for review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? I move approval of the August 5th, 2025 minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Lobby has seconded the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm abstaining, so I wasn't present at the meeting.
So we don't have a quorum for our vote then. So that's fine. We can do that then through a written vote when Commissioner Rouse joins. Sorry, Chair. So we will move on from that vote and can move to the next item on our agenda.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. The next item on the agenda is public comments. We provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings. To ensure we recognize all who wish to speak, we provided an opportunity for those who have joined the Zoom meeting to sign up in the chat box. If you wish to speak but did not sign in, please do so now. Would also remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any safety concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. Ms. Minor, do we have anyone who has indicated that they would like to speak today?
No, Chair Hart, there are no names in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Minor. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. I'll start with congratulations to Commissioner Rouse. The Governor of Virginia reappointed Commissioner Rouse for another 4-year term to the WMSC. Commissioner Rouse already has provided valuable collaboration, expertise, and insight during his previous term, and I look forward to his continuing contributions moving forward. Congratulations, Commissioner Rouse. Next, our meeting today includes updates on WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities and the actions that we take on a daily basis to help ensure that Metro Rail upholds its safety commitments and strives to continuously improve the safety of its system. I appreciate the ongoing communication and coordination that the WMSC staff conducts with Metro Rail at all levels of both organizations. This includes the ongoing work related to audits and corrective action plans, safety certification, investigations, and inspections. In addition to these updates, a reminder to the commissioners that we will discuss the revised WMSC program standard and receive a recommendation from staff to adopt it. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks for today's meeting?
Yes, I do. Let me just arrange my screens a little bit here. I do have some updates, Chair Hart. During the last meeting, I provided details of the staff and my interactions with Metro Rail, as well as with our jurisdictional partners who provided comments on the WMSC draft program standard. As Chair Hart said, at the conclusion of my remarks, we'll present the draft program standard for the commissioners to discuss and vote on its adoption. Also during the last meeting, I shared that through an inspection of Metro Rail records in July as part of the ongoing track structures and roadway worker protection audit, WMSC staff found a number of records that did not support that some WMATA personnel are qualified to set up and be in charge of roadway worker safety. These nonconformances represent a safety deficiency because Metro Rail has no other basis for assuring that its roadway workers meet its own written qualification requirements to access the roadway. This qualification is the primary mitigation for the hazards of train movement and the electrified third rail that all Metro Rail workers face conducting work on the rail right-of-way. After immediately raising this to Metro Rail, it acknowledged these nonconformances and focused on correcting them. Following some initial steps taken by Metro Rail to correct these safety issues, on September 4th, the WMSC issued a finding as set forth in our program standard. Issuing the finding enables the WMSC to holistically document the safety concern and to provide clearly defined minimum corrective actions that Metro Rail is required to complete. And it gives Metro Rail the opportunity to propose a comprehensive corrective action plan to resolve the issue. Metro Rail was provided 7 days to propose such a plan, and on September 8th, Metro Rail provided its proposed cap, which the WMSC evaluated and provided feedback for further refinement on September 12th. Once this proposed corrective action plan meets the required minimum corrective actions, we'll approve it for Metro Rail to fully implement the corrections. Also on September 12th, the WMSC notified Metro Rail that we have designated their Rail Traffic Control Radio Control Consolidation Project for in-depth review per the WMSC program standard. Mr. Smith will provide more details during his remarks. Last, yesterday at the invitation of the FTA, the WMSC provided a briefing on our corrective action plan program to FTA staffers and project management oversight contractors. We answered a number of questions about how CAPs are developed and managed, and we appreciate the FTA's interest in our CAP program, and my thanks to the staff members who worked on that activity with me. So that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
See no hands, sir.
Okay, thank you. As Dr. Meyer and I stated, today we are considering a revision to the WMSC program standard. The program standard is the governing document that sets out requirements and deadlines for Metro Rail and expectations from the WMSC. In accordance with our responsibilities under the WMSC Compact, the process set out in our program standard and federal regulations, we update the program standard at least once a year as part of our continuous improvement process. Dr. Meyer, do you have anything to add?
Yes, Chair Hart, I do. The WMSC Compact lays out our authorities and our responsibilities, and the program standard helps us put those into practice. We consider our program standard improvements as we conduct our work throughout the year, and the program standard comes to the commissioners for review at least once each calendar year. This year, our review process included meetings internally and consultation with Metro Rail personnel. Then, once the WMSC produced a final draft of the revision, we formally transmitted the draft to WMATA for its 30-day review back in April. Metro Rail provided timely comments on the draft in May. The WMSC also received correspondence from the Office of the City Administrator on behalf of DC Mayor Bowser, from DC Council Chair Phil Mendelson and Councilmember Charles Allen, from Maryland State Delegate Mark Corman, also from the Washington Suburban Transit Commission, I always say that, and the North Virginia Transportation Commission, and also from the Greater Washington Board of Trade. Throughout the summer months, the WMSC had follow-on conversations with many of those individuals and entities on the program standard process and particulars of our oversight of the WMATA rail system. We carefully reviewed Metro Rail's 91 comments and have incorporated changes in whole or in part to 41 of those comments as were determined appropriate based on our role as the principal safety oversight authority, our compact, and relevant regulations. So I'm going to ask Davis Raddick, our Deputy Chief Operating Officer, to assist in our discussion of this year's proposed changes. So first, Mr. Raddick, can you describe generally the types of changes that we propose to the program standard?
Yes, there are 4 general categories of revisions. FTA required changes, and those include sections 1 and 4, Public Transportation Safety Certification Training Program, Section 2, new roadway worker protection regulations under 49 CFR Part 671. Section 2 also includes disposition of program standard comments from the new 49 CFR Part 674. And Section 7 includes safety event notification requirements derived from the new 49 CFR Part 674. The second category of changes are changes prompted by actions or activities during the past year, and those include signing of internal safety reviews, posting inspection reports, and safety certification, adding a purpose and benefit section, as well as when safety certification oversight begins. The third category of changes are focused on clarifications and enhancing existing language. This is more for safety certification in Section 10, which includes project verification documentation, as well as access to project documents. And revision to Section 11, the fines section, as well as the fourth category of changes, which include changes to address comments or concerns raised by Metro, and those include coordination with other agencies for audits. There is also now a new feature of an oral petition to the commissioners as part of the petition for reconsideration process, and we'll talk about some of those in a little bit.
And before we do that, can you describe generally Metro's comments on our proposal?
As you noted before, we received 91 comments, and those break down in the following categories. Again, 25 comments related to language that was necessarily added as a result of new FTA regulations, so the new 674, 672, and 671, as well as 31 comments related to language that did not change from the existing version of the program standard that is in place today. 35 comments were related to language that was added as a result of WMSC proposed changes.
So some of these comments generated more comments than others, of course, notably revisions to the proposed revisions to the fines section. Could you go into some detail on the changes to fines?
As is the case with the WMSC's authority or powers, that source is from the 2017 WMSC Compact, and fines are stated in Compact Section 31. The first program standard in 2018-2019 included mention of fines, and program standard revision 4.0 in 2021 also included language changes to the program standards fines section. This year, for revision 8, we propose further changes that track from the Compact's language, specifically that fines are one of several tools the Compact provides to compel WMATA's compliance with corrective actions or orders. And to track the Compact's language, the new fine provision identifies 3 classes of fines: one for corrective action plans or CAPs, one for orders, and one for continuing violations.
So some of the criteria now stated in the program standard are designed to ensure that if the WMSC were to use this authority, it would be reasonable and appropriate. So can you talk some more about the various criteria for each class?
Each class of the fine proposed section has specific triggers for the use of the fine authority. For example, for a fine based on an order, at least one of the following has happened: obstruction of a WMSC oversight program, failure to mitigate an identified safety issue, violation of a program standard requirement, or violation of a Federal Transit Administration regulation that relates to state safety oversight or rail transit agencies.
So appreciate those examples. Additionally, these are factual determinations, and any issue, of course, would not start with a fine. As other parts of the program standard explain, most issues can be and are resolved at the lowest possible staff level. And of course, if that breaks down, the program standard builds in several levels of constructive dialogue. And there's even an avenue of reconsideration for WMATA to avail itself of in the latest proposed changes. So more on that in a bit.
Yeah, that's right. And Metro's comment on fines was simply a categorical objection of the entire fine section without acknowledging that fines are created by the WMSC Compact. Nonetheless, based on the comments from Metro, we took the opportunity to consider the draft that was proposed to Metro, and as a result, the program standard proposed for adoption today does not include dollar figures or fine ranges. And the CEO, in consultation with the commissioners, will make that decision based on the specific circumstances of the nonconformance. One other concern raised by stakeholders is the issue that both the WMSC and WMATA are taxpayer funded. What is the public interest in the WMSC fining WMATA?
Right. Thank you for reminding us of that issue. The jurisdictions, of course, created the WMSC to effectively oversee safety of the WMATA rail system, and in so doing, created the WMSC with authority to impose safety changes at WMATA or achieve compliance with safety requirements. And fines are just one such tool for doing that, a tool that the WMSC has not needed to use so far. The public is best served by having a strong safety regulator, and fines are a part of the way to ensure that.
And they're also not meant to be punitive. Instead, they're a tool to compel the Compact's word compliance, and the Compact directs that the fine amount will go into an escrow account that the WMSC controls. The money would then be returned to WMATA to address the out-of-compliance safety measure.
So switching to another topic of notable program standard changes, can you provide more details on the other changes to Section 11, specifically about WMATA's comment about mediation?
Yes, well, WMATA proposed that the WMSC use a mediator as a way of resolving disputes between the WMSC and WMATA. WMATA has mentioned this before, and that is why the currently in effect program standard has 2 levels of review: CEO and board. This year, in response to WMATA's comment and from discussions between the WMSC board chair and the WMATA board chair, the WMSC is proposing a new feature: oral petitions before the board. This is an optional feature that WMATA may avail itself in addition to the default written petition route.
The program standard now outlines several levels of constructive discussions, every level of staff review up through senior management, including CEO to CEO. And for an order, there are levels of review where it comes before me as the WMSC or then the board. And I'd also like to note that no other state safety oversight agency uses mediators in the way WMATA is proposing, which is to entirely hand the issue to a third party. Also, for the WMSC and WMATA, the compact already provides that third party by stating that the United States District Courts for the three jurisdictions have exclusive and original jurisdiction for actions. Use of a mediator would be contrary to this compact language. Finally, Mr. Raddick, you identified in the beginning of your review regulatory changes created a large number of revisions to the program standard this cycle. Specifically, the safety event notification matrix was updated because of a number of definition changes. Could you explain those changes?
Yes, so program standard sections 1, 2, 4, and 7 were changed to address new FTA regulations. 25 WMATA comments related to language that was necessarily added because of these new FTA regulations. And for safety event notifications, FTA replaced accident notifications with safety event notifications. And safety event is defined more broadly than accident. The WMSC team worked closely with the WMATA team to revise the notification and reporting requirements with the safety event notification matrix, which is in section 7, to address the FTA's changes while maintaining beneficial data collection using the more specific definitions that exist with FTA today.
Thank you. I don't have anything further to add at this time. Obviously, we can take any questions, but I would close this out by urging the commissioners to adopt the proposed revision to the program standard.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners before we bring this to a vote?
Yes, sorry, Chair, for interrupting you. Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand.
Yes, please, Commissioner Conklin.
Thank you. So I have one question and a couple of observations about the process this cycle for revising the program standard. I'll do the question last, if that makes sense. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Meyer and the staff for engaging with representatives of regional groups. I think that's a major enhancement to the consideration of this program standard and shows, I think, a commitment to serving the public interest strongly. And I would encourage, as we continue to think about the way this is structured, that we find a way to engage with those commenting agencies on a regular basis so that we're hearing the feedback from outsiders' perspectives, what might or might not be going well with the oversight program. So I definitely appreciate the engagement there. I'd like to note the pivot from the specification of the monetary fines. I think, clearly that's something that will be needed at some point if a fine is ever issued, but I think was probably alarming coming to that without further development of this concept that you've got in the program standard now. And I think those are a tool that may be needed, but hopefully it isn't needed. And we never get to the point of having to worry about how a fine program is administered. In terms of the coordination with other audit or oversight activities, I mean, that has been raised as a duplicative and workload creating issue for Metro Rail. And we obviously want the safety staff at Metro Rail to be working as efficiently as possible. So I think it's a nice advancement that we have in there, the opportunity to coordinate like reviews on like subject matter. Whether or not those things ever line up in calendar or in scope is to be seen, but I do think it's a worthwhile activity to have a look ahead and see whether there's the opportunity for economy in those reviews. And I'd like to talk about the dispute resolution that you mentioned. I think it's a major step forward to have a opportunity for a live forum where commissioners could hear both from commission staff and from Metro Rail staff about different points of view on any safety issue that reaches that level of contentiousness. And I very much appreciate the concept that those arguments would be available to the public so that they could see the weight of the arguments that both sides have and make their own judgment. Obviously not a ruling judgment, but make their own judgment about whether the commission is acting appropriately when it comes to violations of safety standards that we observe at Metro Rail. So I think that's a major enhancement. So I'd like to thank the staff for fully considering a lot of those comments that have been raised and finding solutions that move us towards a more open discussion of this. The only question I had, Dr. Meyer, is whether or not there's any expectation that fines are going to be used in the near future, or any issues that are in your sights as reaching the level of where fines might be needed.
Thank you. And obviously, we can't make predictions about the future, in the coming years or anything like that. But I think your question is: are we currently, right now, contemplating finding Metro as a result, say, of any program standard changes that might be enacted today? And the answer to that is no. We are not currently contemplating any sort of finding action.
I appreciate that. That's all I had to say. Thanks for letting me share my comments and questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Dr. Meyer before we bring the program standard to a vote?
I see no other hands, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing none, in that case, is there a motion to adopt Resolution R-2025, adopting Program Standard Revision 8.0?
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Second, Commissioner Farrar-Dyke. All those in favor, thank you for the motion and second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yay.
Okay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Where the vote is unanimous, 5 yeas, 0 nays. So the commission has adopted revision 8 to the program standard. We will finalize the document, incorporating all the final comments, and have that with an effective date of October 1st, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. We will now move on to our next item, which is audits, with an update from Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you, Chair Hart. The WMSC is in the process of completing our triennial cycle of audits. Each audit examines Metrorail's compliance with its Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan and its associated requirements. I will provide an update on one completed audit and others that are underway. As I report regularly, the 2024 Fitness for Duty and Occupational Health Programs audit has not progressed. WMATA has not responded to the WMSC's initial request when WMATA believes that worker safety information is responsive to that request. The WMSC is seeking relief through the enforcement of its subpoena for this information. Next, the Control Center and Rail Operations audit was issued on August 27th, 2025. As with every audit conducted, Metrorail had the opportunity to provide comments, which the WMSC received and then carefully considered before finalizing the report. We appreciate Metrorail's collaboration to complete the audit and report.
John, the audit outlines positive improvements, findings, and recommendations. Could you walk us through some examples of the positive improvements that we observed?
Yes, the first positive that we noted was Metrorail's transition to its new control center facility with new equipment since our previous 2020 audit of the control center. Secondly, the investigation interviews are no longer being coached. Over the course of this audit, personnel gave distinct, uncoached answers. This was evident based on the interviews and nature of the feedback provided to the WMSC throughout the audit. Third, there are functioning microphones at all desks and locations in the control center, and ambient audio is also being recorded from all those locations. Fourth, Metrorail is following the fatigue management policy that is applicable to its rail traffic controllers. And fifth, the power desk function is performing as intended and reducing the risk of electrocution for those on the roadway.
The WMSC appreciates and commends Metro for these demonstrated positive achievements, but they also stand for another positive, which is the robust collaboration that exists between Metro and the WMSC on safety. With the exception of the facility move, the remaining 4 positives were a direct result of the WMSC's corrective action plans. Is that right, John?
Yes, that is correct. WMSC caps C0051, C0054, 0055, and C212 each set the course for these improvements.
And turning to the findings from the Control Center and Rail Operations audit, this audit identified 9 findings and 3 recommendations. We'll walk through each of those and some of the supporting evidence. But the first finding is that Metrorail does not have a sufficient number of rail traffic controllers and turnover is increasing. This issue has a long tail at Metro. John, can you walk us through that?
Yes, despite the improvements in staffing at various points in time, the control center staffing has been a persistent challenge for Metro. Currently, the WMSC has two corrective action plans from the WMSC's first control center audit that remain open and now require reevaluation. C0049 was intended to address work environment challenges, and C0056 was intended to address inadequate staffing and staff turnover. Both C0049 and C0056 included many of the same actionable items because the control center's work environment and high rate of staff turnover were seen as contributors to the control center's inadequate staffing. Metrorail took the 2020 audit findings and associated caps seriously, which led to increased rail traffic controller staffing levels for a time. The total number of staffing controllers peaked at 50 in November 2022, then dropped to 41 in January 2023, before peaking again at 51 in March of 2024. At the time of this report, there are 46 rail traffic controllers. Metrorail has never reached the 61 rail traffic controller threshold that Metrorail's assessment determined was the minimum number of rail traffic controllers necessary to safely operate the rail system. Our audit, in addition to Metrorail's own assessments, indicate that additional action is needed to address the unresolved staffing and retention issues.
The second finding of the audit is related to rail traffic controller training, specifically that written assessments, final assessments, and certification tests present conflicting data regarding the individual's aptitude.
Yes, this finding was based on Metrorail's performance standardization manual for rail traffic controllers, and that currently addressing only final written tests and practical exams, but it doesn't take into account the written assessments taken during the course itself. During the WMSC's review of the documents, there were 8 documented instances from June 2024 to November 2024 where students failed written exams but passed the practical exams, sometimes on the same day, and were subsequently certified as rail traffic controllers. Another practice of Metrorail's rail traffic controller certification process is that rail traffic controllers certify with a partner on the console. However, this practice makes it challenging for training personnel to assess whether an individual RTC trainee has met the prescribed standards of the performance on their own. As a certified rail traffic controller, an individual may work console alone without another RTC. And even when 2 RTCs are on one console as intended, it is critical that Metrorail's RTC certification process results in 2 qualified RTC on that console.
On a positive note, Metrorail has already taken steps to address this finding, including updates to the rail traffic controller certification process and instituting trend analysis in relation to rail traffic controller training. Keeping on the topic of training, but shifting to rail vehicle operators, the next finding of the report is that Metrorail does not provide refresher training to all vehicle operators on incidents and emergencies. John, can you provide more information?
Yes, Metrorail provides vital training to rail vehicle operators on incidents and emergencies, which it includes items such as best course of action to take to resolve incidents and emergencies utilizing all available resources in a timely manner. This training is only provided during the initial rail vehicle operator training. It is addressed in the ongoing certification process, but that certification does not include training.
The fourth finding is that Metrorail's train-the-trainer program for rail training is not defined by Metrorail's procedures.
Yes, Metrorail's Train the Trainer program is defined as specialized training initiatives designed to prepare experienced facilitators to effectively deliver a new training program. These programs focus on equipping facilitators with the specific knowledge, skills, and instructional techniques needed to understand the content of the new program thoroughly and deliver it in a way that engages learners and meets the program's learning objectives. Metrorail's 3 components of the trainer process are to take the class, observe the class, and then teach the class. Metrorail provided records for various trainees, but they did not provide enough evidence of a defined train-the-trainer program or procedure that evaluates the progress and aptitude of the new instructor. Effective trainers are crucial to effectively training rail vehicle operators for safety and success. A formalized documented train-the-trainer program would help to ensure standardization across trainers while bolstering the trainer's own individual skills.
In response to this finding, Metrorail stated that it was actively defining its train-the-trainer process to create updated procedures for all training programs. The updated procedures are planned to include procedures to onboard, train, evaluate, and coach new training instructors. The WMSC appreciates Metrorail's work to address this finding. The next finding is that Metrorail revised ATC local control procedures without first informing all affected staff, including rail traffic controllers.
Yes, while conducting an observation at the control center on November 1st, 2024, WMSC personnel were informed by 2 rail traffic controllers that personnel in the field had changed procedures regarding ATC local signal control and the requirements to contact the control center to set each route. Metrorail confirmed that a memorandum was issued on this subject, noting that the Metrorail operating rulebook sets the guidelines, but that such a memo may not have reached the rail traffic controllers. Specific procedures must be followed to ensure the safety of personnel in the field and for riders, which requires that personnel are updated on any changes to these procedures.
The sixth finding of this audit is that rail traffic controller consoles have been manipulated without their knowledge. This issue was addressed in Corrective Action Plan C36, which identified the same issue during the course of the first 2020 Control Center audit.
Yes, it is worth explaining in a little greater detail. Metrorail rail traffic controllers rely on screens to monitor and direct the flow of train movement. Uncoordinated remote manipulations without the responsible rail traffic controller's knowledge could create the risk of trains entering prohibited spaces, which could lead to a collision, derailment, or other harm to personnel or riders. Metrorail prohibits such uncoordinated movements, and its procedures prohibit console manipulation. The WMSC requested all console manipulation data from November 1st, 2023 through November 1st, 2024. Metrorail provided documentation on December 3rd, 2024 that confirmed that there had been 4 total instances of console manipulation during that period. Metrorail should monitor to ensure that console manipulation is not occurring in line with its procedures.
Finding 7 of the report cites that Metrorail uses Microsoft Teams chats during safety events, but has not demonstrated a review of these records when determining the facts of these events.
Metrorail regularly relies on Microsoft Teams chats during the course of unfolding events or issues on the Metrorail system, such as for emergencies or during general service disruptions. When investigating safety events, all possible sources of information should be reviewed. The WMSC program standard specifically requires that instant messaging, to include Microsoft Teams, be reviewed and analyzed just like any other source of fact gathered as part of an investigation. Chats are one source for what happened during the incident and should therefore be reviewed and considered in WMATA's investigations to identifying facts, corroborating facts, or any other valuable investigatory purpose.
And to be clear, the WMSC takes no issue with Metro's use of these chats as a tool. But when used as a tool, it now also presents another source of evidence that can be then used to piece together or corroborate other facts from an event. Switching to finding 8 of the report, which identified that Metrorail documents have not been updated on the required cadence.
As part of the document request for the present audit, the WMSC received 9 documents that did not meet Metrorail's required period of review, which include job descriptions, a reporting form, and procedures. Documents risk being irrelevant or ineffective, which could present a safety issue. Metrorail has existing procedures and processes to ensure that its documents remain current with current practices.
Finding 9 of the report cites that Metrorail personnel are not following Metrorail radio transmission rules, such as for train identification and location information. It is imperative for safety that personnel follow the rules, including identification and repeatbacks, to ensure the message was properly received and understood. What was the evidence we identified for this, John?
For this audit, the WMSC independently reviewed 8 hours of radio communication from January to December of 2024, which included operational channels 1 through 4 and 2 rail yards. In total, there were 31 instances of non-compliance with the Metrorail's operating rulebook. The Metrorail operating rulebook defines the requirements for radio transmission and the protocol for personnel on or around its roadway.
That concludes the findings, but this audit also includes 3 recommendations. The first recommendation is that Metrorail service disruption calls during safety events are led by personnel who are actively managing the event rather than the designated role of Metro 1. John, can you talk more about what these calls are?
Sure. When there are issues or events on the Metrorail system which cause a service disruption greater than 20 minutes, personnel are required to facilitate and manage a Microsoft Teams call for coordination among management personnel from several Metrorail departments. This call, however, can be led by the same person in charge of trying to resolve the incident. Personnel involved in resolving an emergency situation should be focused on that situation to ensure the best possible outcomes. Metrorail may need to evaluate revising the existing procedure or establish a new process that ensures that personnel managing an incident are focused on the incident itself and safely resolving that incident, while others manage the task of communicating incident details to other Metrorail personnel.
The second recommendation is that rail traffic controllers' advanced information management system alarms are not standardized across all rail traffic controller desks, and personnel are not trained on how to arrange their alarm screens.
Yes, Metrorail does not presently have a procedure or training that outlines the requirements for displaying alarms and which alarms are required in each rail traffic controller's display. Metrorail has the opportunity to provide additional training or direction to rail traffic controllers on their console alarm setup, including review of best practices to ensure that all necessary alarms are properly viewable by all relevant personnel.
The third and final recommendation is that Metrorail does not evaluate the effectiveness of line platform instructors.
Yeah, Metrorail personnel serving as line platform instructors conduct hands-on training and evaluation of new rail vehicle operators. Reviewing the performance of the line platform instructors and their training effectiveness would increase the value of that position and possibly lead to improvement in the training of rail vehicle operators. In an interview with personnel from rail transportation, including the Office of Technical Training, personnel stated that there were no current procedures to evaluate line platform instructors and their effectiveness in the training of its rail vehicle operators. In response to this finding, Metrorail stated that Rail Operations Quality Training recently assigned instructors to support training at the rail divisions and is in the process of finalizing a work instruction which include procedures to evaluate LPI performance. This document will be shared with the WMSC once it has been finalized. The WMSC appreciates the positive development and work ongoing to address this issue and looks forward to receiving the procedures to evaluate line platform instructor performance. Each finding discussed today with the supporting evidence of what was found during the audit is outlined in the full report, which is available on our website, wmsc.gov. Per the WMSC program standard, Metrorail has until September 26th to propose draft caps and to address each of these findings and recommendations.
Thank you. Could you also provide an update on the other audits that remain in progress, John?
Yes, the next update is on the elevators and escalators audit. The draft audit report was sent to Metrorail on September 2nd, initiating the 30-day comment period. We anticipate receiving comments back by October 2nd. The communication system audit is currently being reviewed internally, and once ready, will be sent to Metro for that 30-day comment period. And moving on to the next audit, track structures and roadway worker protection. The WMSC held an exit conference with Metrorail stakeholders on August 19th. We presented our preliminary findings to Metrorail, and as of September 10th, Metrorail provided additional documents for review and consideration based on those findings. The WMSC is currently reviewing the documents provided.
As mentioned in our last public meeting, as part of the track structures and roadway worker protection audit, the WMSC identified certain level 4 qualified roadway workers in charge were improperly qualified and therefore should not have been performing the duties of that critical role. The WMSC initially notified Metrorail of the issue with an urgent hazard notice on July 14th. As a result of the WMSC's July 14th urgent hazard notice and Metrorail's review of the training records, Metrorail determined that 192 of approximately 1,200 Level 4 qualified personnel do not meet Metrorail's requirements to be a Level 4 qualified roadway worker in charge. The 192 are in two groups: 130 who have only received the initial or the first Level 4 training, and 62 who have received refresher or requalification Level 4 training. These nonconformances represent a safety deficiency because Metrorail has no other basis for assuring that its roadway workers are qualified to access the roadway. This qualification is the primary mitigation for the hazards of train movement and the electrified third rail. As a result of this information, the WMSC issued a standalone finding on September 4th ahead of the audit report itself to enable Metrorail to begin addressing this urgent hazard. John, can you explain the evidence supporting this finding?
Yes, the full finding can actually be found on our website, wmsc.gov, under official actions, and then the page heading additional findings. The WMSC identified several nonconformances, such as manager override of course scores, incorrect or missing test score calculations, personnel failing Metrorail determined showstoppers but passing the course, on-the-job training not being performed as required, incomplete RWP retest forms, and other issues, including incomplete checklists and overall file organization and contents. As a result of the finding, Metrorail must now propose a CAP, which includes several elements, which include fully documenting its review of roadway worker protection training records for all those currently identified as Level 4 qualified, and the subset of personnel that do not meet the requirements for that qualification, retesting and requalifying all personnel who have been identified as not meeting the qualification requirements or whose qualification cannot be verified, ensuring that personnel involved in training are not properly trained and conduct the training and qualification in accordance with Metrorail's requirements, evaluating its current record-keeping system, and revising its processes and procedures to ensure that the records are consistently organized and regularly checked for sufficiency and completeness. In the interim, while affected Level 4 qualified roadway workers in charge are being retested and requalified, Metrorail must institute interim mitigation such as removing all affected workers from Level 4 duties, or if affected workers are not removed from Level 4 duties, instituting significant direct oversight and monitoring activities while affected workers are performing their tasks.
Metrorail originally submitted a CAP proposal on August 27th before the finding was issued. Metrorail then submitted a revised draft CAP proposal on September 8th, and the WMSC replied on September 12th with feedback, as is our normal practice, indicating necessary revisions. Metro's latest version of the CAP arrived late last night, which the WMSC will review and provide feedback on. We appreciate the continued efforts from Metrorail to address this finding. Both the WMSC and Metrorail are working swiftly to institute this CAP.
Yes, and our last audit, we are continuing the audit of Metrorail's internal safety reviews program. We held an insurance conference with Metrorail on September 4th and are in the process of completing interviews, document reviews, and observations. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell and Mr. Raddick. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. O'Donnell and Mr. Raddick regarding this topic?
Yes, Chair Hart, Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand. Oh, we have several. We'll start with Commissioner Conklin.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Conklin.
Oh, sure. Thank you. That was a lot, but thank you for going through it all. I'm going to ask if we could rewind to the very first audit you talked about, which was the control audit. I was curious in your finding too, what the aptitude testing looked like, because I thought these were sort of, you either qualified for these roles or you don't qualify. So if you could elaborate a little bit on what you meant by aptitude testing. I had two others on this that maybe I'll just get out and then you can sort of prepare your thoughts on them while we're answering.
Sure.
Finding 6, I don't know the details of what the controller setup is like. So if you could describe what manipulating the control panel is, because that's it wasn't clear to me. I just don't have that familiarity, and I'm sure others don't either. And then I don't even remember what my last one referred to is, non-compliance in the radio transmission.
Mhm.
And what that means. Is it just using incorrect identifiers, or is it stepping on other people with more critical communications? Or I'm not sure what the non-compliance with the protocols looks like. So if it's just sort of explanation of some more details on those, if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Conklin. So yes, the first one, the finding 2 on the rail traffic controller um, aptitude, it's there was certain instances where personnel would be failing exams throughout the course, but the course just continues on. There's certainly a reason why those written tests are taken throughout the course to kind of judge the effectiveness of the training, make sure that they're receiving it properly, but they just kind of move on from those courses. We would certainly expect that would have some effect on moving them forward towards the practical exam at the end, but it didn't have any effect on that. It just kind of continued on from there.
But in the end, they did pass the
Yes, they did
quote
pass
final exam.
the
Okay.
practical, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And the second question was on the radio communication.
No, it was manipulating
Oh, the
the
manipulation. Yeah,
control
let's talk about that first. So console manipulation, other people in the room have the ability to take control of a rail traffic controller's console in case there's an issue, and take control from where they're at over that, and management might step in and do that. But their procedure states specifically that they're not supposed to do that, or they're to document when they do that. And we found several instances where that happened, and there was a few instances where they couldn't explain why that had happened. um, as we mentioned, there was a previous cap on that, C0036, which kind of rolled out procedure changes where they said this isn't allowed. You're not to do this. But we kind of found that during this audit it was actually still occurring. So they need to take a look at that. For the radio transmission issues, the report outlines each kind of different various issue that happened. But yes, it was a failure to repeat back, over speaking, not hearing people clearly, failure to identify, those type of issues. But like I said, each one of those is categorized in the report, so you can
Okay,
see the
thanks.
details. Yeah.
I have one on a later audit, but maybe it makes sense for others to ask questions.
Sure.
Here, Commissioner Ross also has his hand raised.
Yes, please.
Yeah, thanks. And you knocked off one of them because I had the same questions about the console manipulation and what that actually meant. So thanks for answering that. So I only have one other, but it ties to different findings 2, 3, and then and recommendation 3. And it all has to do with training.
Correct.
And
Yes.
my core question is, and I don't even know who would be responsible for this, but trying to walk you through my thinking here, because that may be a mistake to begin with, but you've got different roles with different levels of safety, critical responsibilities. And certain ones we've talked about before, particularly rail operators and certification, if you want to throw that word out there, roadway workers. So there's a whole host of different requirements for certain particular job functions or roles. And they probably are well understood for everybody that lives and works in the rail operating side of the house, everybody that works on signals. But is there an overarching program or formalized program that outlines training expectations for all these different job functions or job roles, and what courses they take, what OJT they're required to have, and any knowledge test or supervisory sign off before they go and actually perform that work, and some of the other things you talked about, like recurrency training, auditing of the program itself. And this is fault me for working in, again, a different side of the industry where we have programs. We struggle with this, but there are at least formalized programs with for railroads Part 243 training programs. And one thing we often see is when you don't have it formalized where everybody can see it and agree to it and follow it. This is what we do every year to refresh the training for individuals. These are what we talk about: operating rules, new regulations, whatever it may be. That when in absence of a formalized program like that, it's all dependent on the quality of the instructor and the person looking after that set of employees, right? So when they go and somebody else comes in and does it a completely different way, everything reverts back to some other state, and everybody's trying to figure out, well, why aren't these employees, doing their jobs correctly? Is this operations and training group the one that kind of Office of Technical Training, I guess is what they're called? Do they have purview over the technical training of all WMATA's employees?
Yes. Thanks, Commissioner Rouse. Yes, they do have purview. I would say that I don't know if that there's a global document. Each kind of department outlines what their training should be. They each have like track instructors will have a training matrix for each of their individual employees and what each of those individuals is required. Operations will have the same for their various different personnel. An overall global document, I can look into that and talk with Metro Rail, but typically we see it as an individual department sets their training requirements, and then training is responsible for delivering the training. So yeah,
that's not unusual, but and I think that's where we've seen issues in the past too, where there's, especially when it becomes very stovepiped, right? And this, or people have been there for a long time. They know their teams, they know the folks, but if they leave, there is no continuity in terms of some of these issues. Or they're there and they're just not doing they're not executing a good program because they don't have things like recurrency training. They don't have checks and balances into place to make sure that, yes, if they're required to get an 80% or higher on a knowledge test, someone actually made sure they got an 80% or higher. They didn't just take the things and say, you're all, go ahead, do whatever you're supposed to do, right?
Right.
So there's sounds like there's any information there would be good, because I think that's getting at the root of the issue is, are there programs, formalized programs that people are following that someone could actually audit outside of that silo, right? Whether it's the Office of Technical Training, safety, somebody else to go in and say, okay, it says you're going to do refresher training every year and it's going to be these 2 courses. Can you show me that all your existing employees in this category have received the refresher training from last year?
Yeah, and I was going to say that's certainly something we look at kind of in an individual department thing, but I will get back to you on a more holistic thing. But we do look at their compliance levels, and Metro Rail's internal reviews also look at those and quite often cite those training deficiencies as an issue. So it's definitely something that's on our radar and on their radar as something we look at every time.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's just it. Those 2 questions really for follow-up.
Yeah, of course.
Is it something formalized, and then is it global in nature that somebody outside of that silo could have purview into it and make sure it's running accordingly?
Sure.
And we look at the functional area, not just the department. So for example, roadway maintenance machines, there's equipment operators mostly within track instructors, but there are also plant and other departments that have equipment operators. We want to see, are they being treated this? They're all operating RMMs, for example. Are they being treated the same as far as training?
Chair, Secretary Treasurer for our dike has her hand raised.
Yes, please.
Yes, I originally had my hand up and I put it down, but I'm come back up. So that's what my response was going to be a little bit earlier, that in the CAPS, one of the things that we should be looking for is a universal type of, this is 2025, some kind of a spreadsheet or some kind of a database that includes all of the trainings, and it has expiration dates on it also. So whoever is monitoring, they could see not on that same day, but I would think that they would be looking at this like a month or 2 in advance, where training or someone could be scheduling things instead of waiting till after the fact. Everybody's training should be in there once they're trained, the date, the expiration date, and so that there could be some follow-up. So when they come back with the cap, I would hope that that's something that they should be looking at as far as trying to formalize all of the actual training on an individual basis per person, so that if they do were to hit the button and say right away training, they could see all of the dates coming up. And there would probably be something that gives them an advance notice so that the next step could be to schedule the training. And then all those that did not comply, there would be a red flag because it would show up in a different color that they missed the date.
Yeah, I thank you, Secretary for Treasurer Farardike. Yeah, there's definitely some things to look at there, and like I said, we're going to look at it more holistically. But on a department level, they are doing, like I said, it's a department level document that captures all their training that's required. They have a database of the training so they can see who's done the training. They do checks, on a regular basis to see who's been trained and what training is required upcoming. Those type of things are happening. They're just happening at a department level outside of training. So we'll certainly look at it as a larger subject to get back to.
I see no further hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for a very productive conversation, and I think we've all learned a lot. Next, we will take up the item of corrective action plans, and Ms. Rhodes, that's your ballpark.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We currently have 75 open corrective action plans with 15 in development. Each CAP has milestones that are called actionable items. Metrorail submits those actionable items on the agreed-upon schedule defined by the CAP. In practice, this means the WMSC receives actionable items every week on a subset of CAPs. WMSC personnel are assigned to review these submittals as they are received by subject matter experts. We review CAP submittals as they come in, and then again, altogether, once all items have been submitted, to review the overall CAP progress as a holistic improvement. Yesterday, September 15th, the WMSC issued a notice of noncompliance to Metrorail regarding corrective action plan C-240 for failure to deliver CAP submittals by their established deadlines. Although there are interactions with Metrorail before issuing a notice of noncompliance, when Metrorail fails to provide actionable items or misses a milestone, the WMSC must address that failure. As part of the 2023 WMSC audit of roadway maintenance machines, the WMSC found that Metrorail is putting its personnel at risk by not ensuring the use of adequate fall protection when working on or around roadway maintenance machines. As a result, Corrective Action Plan C-240 was developed as required by the WMSC program standard. C-240 included 5 actionable items. These items are completed in succession by established deadlines to mitigate or resolve the safety hazard identified. Actionable Item 1 of CAP C-240 was provided to the WMSC on February 23, 2024. On April 18, 2024, Metrorail emailed the WMSC that it intended to pause submission of actionable items related to several open corrective action plans that relate to worker safety. C-240 is included on this list. C-240 Actionable Item 2 was due on July 10, 2024. Actionable Item 3 was due on January 22, 2025. Actionable Item 4 was due on July 22nd, 2025, and Actionable Item 5 was due on August 21st, 2025. The WMSC previously issued a notice of noncompliance regarding Actionable Items 2 and 3 of this CAP on April 4th, 2025. To date, Actionable Item 1 remains the only deliverable that has been received. As stated in the Notice of Noncompliance, for Metrorail to return to compliance with C-240, Metrorail must submit all actionable items that are now past due.
When all of the actionable items of a CAP have been completed, Metrorail submits that CAP for closure review. We look at each actionable item along with an overall view of the finding and minimum corrective action to ensure that the CAP has achieved its goals. Today, we have 2 CAPs that have reached that final closure milestone, which constitutes a completed safety improvement in each case. Ms. Rhodes, can you discuss C-214?
C-214 is a finding from the 2022 WMSC audit of Metrorail's communications systems. This finding identified that Metrorail personnel were using incorrect or incomplete processes and forms when conducting maintenance on safety critical communication systems. And this practice was being accepted by supervisors.
Can you talk about what some of those examples are?
One such safety critical system includes bidirectional amplifiers that carry public safety radio communications for use during emergencies. Preventive maintenance inspections on this equipment includes a mandatory defects checklist, and there was not uniform evidence that this checklist was completed. In another example, the public address system included fields that were not complete and missing signatures. Then there's the issue of different form versions being used to complete the same public address preventive maintenance inspection. 21 of the 64 such inspections used the out-of-date 2013 form.
Those examples play into the other component of C-214, which is where was the supervisory oversight?
To address the lack of supervisory oversight, Metrorail developed an additional layer of QC supervisory checks to ensure accuracy and completion of inspections in accordance with its maintenance control policy. These included checks by supervisors and then checks by superintendents to ensure that the QC checks were being properly completed by supervisors.
And on the document control issues, Metro ensured that all personnel had access and awareness of the central repository where all the current preventative maintenance and corrective maintenance forms and procedures reside. This was particularly noted during the audit's interviews, where one person told the WMSC that you have to be a search guru to navigate the storage drive where such items are saved. Training was provided on accessing the forms and the importance of using only the forms located in the repository going forward. In the most recent communications audit that concluded this summer, did we observe any issues related to outdated or incomplete forms?
That audit did look for this issue, and to Metrorail's credit, no such issues were observed.
Thank you for that, Ashley. Can we move on to C-220?
C-220 also originated from the 2022 WMSC audit of Metrorail's communication systems. This CAP aimed to address the deficiency that Metrorail did not have schematics, manuals, and other materials in each communications room required by Metrorail's communications room biweekly cleaning and inspection PMI.
This CAP evolved over its life. Can you walk us through those changes?
Initially, the plan on this CAP was to review each room and then physically update each room with the proper schematics, manuals, and drawings. However, once Metrorail started work on the CAP, Metrorail requested to modify the CAP to ensure that all of the current schematics, manuals, and other materials were available in a central location, and that personnel could electronically access all of those documents in these rooms.
We perceive this change as enhancing the durability of the process by strengthening document control. However, electronic access must also be available in these locations, which can present signal issues due to their locations.
Correct, yes. Metrorail's IT team has ensured that personnel have dedicated access in all communication room locations.
Given the change that this being electronic rather than showing us the physical records, how did we verify this?
WMSC staff went with Metrorail's technicians to confirm technicians were able to show access to the repository where they can locate the latest documents needed to maintain that vital equipment from within communications rooms. Additionally, the WMSC required WMATA to still furnish physical drawings of fire alarm related equipment in each room due to the potential need to access this specific information in an emergency in which electronic connectivity may be jeopardized. The WMSC verified the presence of these physical fire alarm related drawings in communications rooms and on-site observations.
Thank you, Ashley. This concludes our remarks on CAPS.
Thank you, Mr. Raddick and Ms. Rhodes. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Raddick and Ms. Rhodes?
See no hands, Chair. But if I may then interject, could we return to reviewing the minutes? Now that we do have a voting quorum, who have joined, could we revisit, basically repeat our minutes review that Secretary Treasurer Farah Dyke began earlier in the meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay, the minutes of the August 5th, 2025 meeting were posted for review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? I move approval of the August 5th, 2025 minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Lobby has seconded the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Thank you again. So Chair, the vote is 4 yeas and 0 nays, understanding that Commissioner Conklin has abstained from his absence at the last meeting. So the minutes are adopted as presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you for remembering to go back and do the vote. I appreciate that. Okay, back to the agenda as we were doing it. We're looking at oversight of Metro Rail safety certification. Mr. Smith, that's for you to speak about.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Today, I'll provide updates on several key areas of our ongoing oversight, including Metro Rail's automatic train operations performance, including the station overruns in automatic train operations, the WMSC's notification to Metro Rail of selection of the RTC button controller consolidation project for in-depth review, and the status of WMSC's safety certification oversight of the 8000 series rail cars. We'll begin with ATO performance. Since our last meeting, the WMSC has continued to monitor station overruns across all lines operating in ATO, maintaining weekly contact with WMATA to review data, discuss trends, evaluate mitigation efforts, including in the field and conducting our own data analysis of station overruns. WMATA continues to implement short-term mitigations such as speed restrictions at high station overrun incidents areas and targeted operator training reinforcements, as well as more holistic corrective actions, including software adjustments, hardware adjustments, and infrastructure modifications, all of which are designed to identify and address the causes of station overruns in automatic train operation. The diagram on the left side of this slide, titled Automatic Train Operation Overruns by Line Since Activation, prevents the cumulative number of overruns reported since each line entered ATO service. The red line, which has been operating in ATO since December 2024, given its longer ATO operating timeframe since activation, continues to show the highest number of overruns at 380. The last three lines to be placed into ATO were the silver, orange, and blue lines on June 15th. The silver line has recorded 161 overruns, followed by the orange line with 134, and the blue line with 95. The yellow and green lines, which began ATO service in May of 2025, have reported 76 and 66 overruns respectively. For context to these station overrun numbers, last year the total number of station overruns was 250 for the entire system. The majority of these were in manual mode prior to the red line activation on December 15th, 2024. As we approach the 13-week mark for the blue, orange, and silver lines, we are closely evaluating whether similar patterns are emerging as those observed on the red line during its ATO rollout. This comparison helps us assess whether current mitigation strategies are effective and whether additional interventions may be needed. WMATA continues to use this overrun data to guide and prioritize its corrective actions aimed at improving ATO performance. These efforts are informed by detailed incident analysis and trend monitoring, and they span multiple engineering and operational domains. One key area of focus has been the adjustment of third rail end approaches at select stations. When these end approaches are misaligned, they can produce arcing or sparking, which in turn generates spurious radio frequency signals. These unintended RF emissions can interfere with the railcar's ability to correctly interpret marker coil frequencies, which are essential for receiving the program station stop information. When the ATO system fails to pick up this information accurately, the train may not execute its program stop correctly, which may result in a station overrun. In addition to third rail realignments, WMATA is repositioning marker coils to ensure consistent and accurate train stopping points, refining ATO software and hardware with OEM support, revising operating policies, enhancing operator training, and implementing temporary speed restrictions at high incidence stations. WMATA is also working closely with their original equipment manufacturers for the railcars to refine the ATO software. These updates are intended to improve train responsiveness, braking precision, and system integration, especially in complex track geometry locations. Operating policies have been revised to better align with ATO performance characteristics, including updated guidance for train operators, dispatchers, and control center staff on managing train movements and responding to overrun events. Enhanced operator training modules reinforce understanding of ATO behavior, station approach dynamics, and manual intervention protocols, particularly for operators transitioning between manual and automatic modes or working on newly activated ATO lines. Finally, temporary speed restrictions have been implemented at stations with elevated overrun rates to reduce the likelihood of incidents, while longer-term engineering solutions are developed and deployed. Together, these corrective actions reflect a multi-layered approach to improving ATO reliability and safety. The WMSC continues to monitor their implementation and effectiveness through weekly data reviews and field inspections. Next, since the return to design speed on all Metro Rail lines, we are tracking reports of rough ride conditions, which have been noted through a combination of field observations, WMSC staff monitoring, and feedback received directly from passengers through different channels. These conditions include noticeable vibrations, jolts, and irregular train movements that may affect both passenger comfort and system performance. At this time, we are awaiting a formal report from WMATA summarizing the results of its investigation, outlining any contributing factors that have been identified, and explaining the rationale behind WMATA's position that these conditions do not rise to the level of a safety issue, and detailing any next steps WMATA is taking to address or further evaluate these rough ride conditions. The WMSC remains concerned that recurring rough ride conditions could be an indication of underlying issues with track alignment, wear, or other infrastructure elements that, if left unaddressed, may accelerate deterioration and increase long-term maintenance needs. Beyond these operational and maintenance concerns, rough ride conditions may also present safety risks, as progressive infrastructure degradation can contribute to higher derailment potential, reduce train stability, and increased vulnerability under emergency braking or other unusual operating conditions. Moving on to another project, the WMSC is conducting an in-depth safety certification review on the 8000 series railcars. WMATA has submitted several sets of preliminary safety certification documents for the 8000 series railcars, and I reported at the August 5th public meeting that the WMSC's initial review focused on validating that Metrorail has conducted a comprehensive hazard identification and mitigations, and also to communicate to Metrorail any hazards that Metrorail had not captured. Although we anticipated providing our formal feedback by the end of August, we were unable to do so because as we dug into the documents provided, we did not have all the documents referenced in the analysis to complete that work. WMATA has since provided some of the requested other materials last week, and our review of those materials is ongoing. WMATA claims other documents are in draft and potentially would be misleading. Thus, we have asked for dates when the documents would be final and are awaiting an update from Metrorail. We continue to request access to the full set of preliminary design review documents to perform our state safety oversight obligation. of validating that Metrorail has followed its documented hazard identification process to document hazards, and that Metrorail has taken the necessary steps to mitigate and correct hazards to the lowest practicable level in designing, engineering, manufacturing, and testing the 8000 series rail cars. Last, since the certification of our SSOA program, the WMSC has maintained a sustained focus on the Rail Operations Control Center, emphasizing staffing capacity, procedures, communications, and the overall professionalism of Control Center personnel. In September 2020, the WMSC issued its ROCC Triennial Audit Report, identifying significant safety concerns related to management, training, and other operational aspects. Metrorail's corrective action in response to these findings have centered on improving the Control Center's culture and operational effectiveness. In May 2022, the WMSC issued an order addressing improper third rail power restoration procedures, further reinforcing the need for robust Control Center protocols. Metrorail has continued to implement corrective actions, including the recent closure of the Power Desk Corrective Action Plan, which followed WMSC's verification of completed safety improvements. The WMSC oversees the Control Center through ongoing audits, inspections, and investigations. Earlier in this meeting, Mr. O'Donnell presented findings from the most recent rail control audit released in August. Rail traffic controller staffing, training, and readiness continue to be a priority area for the WMSC, as we seek to verify that improvements are not only implemented, but sustained. Rail traffic controllers are responsible for train movement on mainline tracks, coordination with roadway worker personnel, including power de-energization and restoration, and managing emergency response activities. The Control Center and its rail traffic controllers serve as the nerve center of the Metro Rail system. Given this critical role, the WMSC has formally designated the RTC button controller consolidation project for in-depth review under our program standard. WMATA's intent with this project is to consolidate RTC and button controller functions to streamline operations and improve coordination. The WMSC designated this project for in-depth review due to its operational complexity and the need to comprehensively identify and mitigate hazards of changing the mode of rail controller performance by consolidating control functions. This designation means the WMSC will apply heightened focus to the project's hazard mitigation efforts, implementation, and documentation. And WMATA may not implement changes to the current RTC and button controller assignments without WMSC's concurrence. Through this enhanced oversight, the WMSC will validate that all aspects of the project are performed following Metrorail's safety certification requirements. Thank you, Chair Hart. That concludes this presentation.
Thank you. That was a lot. And so I don't know, we may have quite a few questions. I'm going to open it up. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Smith?
Yes, Chair. Vice Chair Lobby has raised his hand.
Yes, please.
Vice Chair Lobby, you're
Vice Chair,
muted.
you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your presentation. I had a couple of areas I wanted to ask you about.
Yes, sir.
First of all, in looking at your graphics on the overruns, I see that Silver Line seems to be leading the pack with 161 total, and even in the last month, 52 overruns. Is there a reason for that?
Seems there's some operational challenges there on the Silver Line. One of the things that WMATA has kind of highlighted to us was the fact that some of the rail cars that operate on the Silver Line have not operated on other sections of the railroad in ATO. So they're finding some instances where rail cars are not performing in ATO as they would have expected them to.
Does it have anything to do with the characteristics of the Silver Line? Because, you know, the Silver Line is the newest line, and I assume that the signal system and the automatic train operation equipment should be, you know, probably in the best shape. But are there other characteristics like the portion above ground or the speeds they hit? Does this have anything to do with the overruns, or have you been able to analyze any of that?
Yes, some of the overruns are being affected by the speed, the entry speed of the trains into the stations. I would have to dig in a little further, Commissioner Law or Vice Chair Lobby, to kind of analyze that data. We can certainly perform that and get that back to you.
And I think it would be interesting to see because the Silver Line operates on the same route as the Orange Line, pretty much, when it's downtown and to the east. But then when it goes out and operates long distance towards the airport, there's an opportunity for higher speeds and more exposure to the weather and other things. And I'm wondering if these issues are occurring more on this extensive area, basically between East Falls Church and Dulles Airport, or is it occurring in the tunnels with the other equipment?
Yeah, I again, Vice Chair Lobby, I'd have to go back and look at the actual data for those. But I will say that the Orange Line and Silver Line have both underperformed in their activation of ATO than the other lines. The Red Line has come down to, the overruns are starting to trend in the right direction, but Orange and Silver Line are continuing to kind of, although they're trending down, they're still making up a large portion of the overruns for the total system.
And the other issue I wanted to talk to you about is this issue of rough riding metro cars, and I experienced this myself twice on the Orange Line, and the first time was between where you exit the tunnel coming west on the Orange Line and going into the East Falls Church Station. And this is an area where the trains hit maximum speeds of 75 miles an hour, I believe. And the ride was perfectly normal until we got up to the higher speed, and then suddenly the whole car began to shake. And you talk about a rough ride, but it's not a rough ride. It's a very extreme vibration. And I've been in the railroad industry for over 40 years, and I was concerned about it, that I actually called up Washington Metro and told them, I gave them the car number. I said, there's something wrong with this car, because the vibration was so extreme. It was the lead car in the train. And this is the first time after years and years and years of riding Metro I've ever experienced anything like that. But about a week later, going the other direction in the same area, I experienced another ride that had this very, very high vibration at the higher speeds. Not as bad as the first one, but there seems to be an issue there. And to me, the characteristics of this vibration is that something is way out of balance. And when you get up to the higher speeds, you get a resonance frequency, but the entire car shakes, and it goes right through your body. So I'm sure some of the writers have experienced that, and I think I'd be very interested in understanding what's going on there, because I think this is something that is a potential safety issue that needs to be looked at and corrected.
And while we're speaking, Vice Chair Lobby, I noticed Ms. Samara Singha was nodding quite knowingly to some of the things that you were saying. Shamila, did you have anything you'd like to add there?
Only reinforcing the experience that Vice Chair Lobby was explaining on his recent Metro Rail rides. As recently as yesterday, I used the orange, silver, blue line more often. I was riding from Vienna into the district, and I had the same issue, and I actually recorded the violent vibrations, as I called it. And I know several of our staff have already interacted with the car maintenance individuals at Metro, sharing them the information of the car number and the location where this was happening. We are trying to underscore to Metro that it is not an individual car issue. it's not a track issue, that really they need to be looking at this holistically from the standpoint of the increased speeds coupled with the vehicle track interactions of each of the car series. A 7,000 series rail car might perform somewhat differently to the 6,000 or the 3,000. So I was only nodding because as recently as yesterday, I had recorded about a minute of footage where several staff on our team who have 30 plus years of rail vehicle experience said that they have never seen the level of vibrations that they were seeing in that video, just like Vice Chair Lobby is saying.
And let me first say, Vice Chair Lobby, thank you for contacting Washington Metro to let them know the car number on this. We need, and we are tracking Reddit and social media posts of passengers that are recording these events as well to try to get that information over to WMATA. And we continue. We've had one meeting to talk to WMATA about this condition, and we continue to follow up with them to figure out and help and get to the bottom of what the cause of these issues are. One of the things that they have discussed with us is that on rail cars that have the wheels replaced, there's a certain dynamic between the diameter of the wheel and the speed of the train that causes these wheels to go out around, as they're describing it. And once they reach a certain diameter less than the new wheel size, which somewhere around the 27-inch diameter, this kind of phenomenon kind of goes away, if you will. But while these wheels are in their kind of newer condition, they seem to experience this out of round phenomenon more frequently than others.
Well, I think that's good information, but again, this seems to be speed sensitive. In all my experience riding Metro, when the top speed was 55, 60 miles an hour, this never occurred. And then suddenly, even on the new equipment, and suddenly we went up to 75 miles an hour, and now this is showing up. So it is speed dependent, at least on the car that I was on, and I hope that when the Metro receives these reports, that they take them seriously and actually look at the cars and try to figure out what's going on. Because when this happened to me the first time, I was in the lead car, and I can't believe the driver would continue with that train. The vibration was that bad. I mean, it was absolutely uncomfortable to even sit there because your whole body was shaking along with the car. So I think they really have something they need to look at here, and I'd rather they look at it now before we have a derailment or something because of this. So thank you for that.
Agreed, Vice Chair Lobby, and for sure we think there's a speed component to these vibrations as well.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to say that it was just the wheel size. There's kind of at least a working theory is that there's a resonance frequency, like you were mentioning, between the dynamic of the track interaction, the wheels, and then the speed of the rail car that's causing this violent vibration. And
it's definitely a resonance problem, maybe based on the structure of the car. It's a natural frequency that they hit, and everything goes crazy. So I'll look forward to hearing more about this in the future.
We will keep you posted, Vice Chair Lobby, for sure.
Thank you.
Sharmila did indicate that she felt like she may be re-entering the Earth's atmosphere as she was on this rail car yesterday. So
I would like to second that, and I haven't been keeping records of, date, time, and car number, but for years I've noticed that the vibration on curves is much higher than it needs to be, and vibration is the bane of all equipment. That's one of the worst ways to shorten the life of equipment is have vibration on it. And I've noticed, to me, what I consider excess vibration on curves for a long time.
And I think as we sit here and talk about this, I think one of the things that we would encourage the public here to reach out to either WMATA or the WMSC directly and report these cars that they're experiencing these rough rides on as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important if the public's going to report things to get the car number. The car number's inside every car, so it may just be a subset that we're looking at, but I think this is an important issue that needs to be understood as we go forward. And let me just add one thing to Chairman Hart's comments. You know, where I experienced this was absolutely straight track going maximum speed. So maybe there's an issue with curving also, but the curving had nothing to do with the vibration that I experienced. So there might be a couple of different issues going on here. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lobby. And I see Commissioner Rouse has his hand up.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get into that topic. I think you had a good discussion there. And if Commissioner Lobby is raising an issue, knowing how many trains he's ridden on in his career, that means there's some issue there. And I don't want to paint a picture like there's a systemic issue here. You know, it could have been just one car. You know, I know I've been in a similar situation with a flat wheel that was so bad that I had to do the same thing and call out that car number. But it's also an optics issue, right? I mean, if we're noticing it, other people are noticing it. So whether or not you're even close to a safety limit, it's one of those things that you want to address and look at. And years ago, there used to be a whole host of tests you would run for new rail cars that the old Urban Mass Transit Administration had, the whole list. And I can't speak for what WMATA's doing, and David, you and your team here would know better in terms of vehicle qualification and the new vehicle procurement. But I know from my experience, a lot of those tests have gone by the wayside, and we just don't perform it anymore. But you would look at all of these issues, right? Not only your operating speed, but 10, 20% above it, just to see where you might have potential issues. You'd look at worn wheel profiles versus new wheel profiles for what you mentioned, Mr. Smith, in terms of the fact that can drive certain oscillations until it gets to a place it wants to be. But yeah, I don't know how much that was done anymore, or at least on the 7 series versus the 1Ks, where those tests may have been more prominent, and whether they have that level of data and say, yeah, we saw this when we first we're going through design and testing and commissioning of those vehicles, that at 79 miles an hour, it has a problem. I'm just throwing the speed out there, obviously. So I doubt that goes on anymore, but hopefully it does. And if it doesn't, maybe that's something to consider for the 8Ks, is to go back and brush off some of those tests we used to run, because there was reasons behind them, right? And this is it. And again, for Metro, whether or not it's a safety, a critical safety issue systemically or not, it's certainly an optics issue. And it's something I would think they'd want to address, because other people have mentioned it before as well. And it comes with all these other factors that you've mentioned, increasing speed, that type of stuff. So my core question, and maybe it's not a question, but I like what Commissioner Lobby was talking about in terms of the Silver Line in particular, and trying to look at some of these overruns. And I realize you've done it by the color coded, because that's what most of us are familiar with. I doubt anybody would know, the K, where the K line is versus the other lines, and where the Silver Line runs on its own. But that is something that does drive questions in terms of where this is happening, right? And when we talk blue line, is it just the dedicated blue line, or is it blue, orange, silver where this is happening? Or is it was a blue line train? And so for this data moving forward, it's more location specific, I would think, than it is color of the line, so to speak. So I don't know if there's a better way to kind of parse the data, but that might be helpful, because I think what you're looking at and what we're thinking might not be the same thing. But I'm thinking geographic locations, what's driving it, as Vice Chair Lobby mentioned, you're outside for a good chunk of the Silver Line. Is that the section that's having an issue? And same with the Orange Line and its sections versus in the tunnels where it's sharing the track with Blue Line. I don't know, Paul, and you don't need an answer here now, but I do think if we're going to continue to track this data, if there's another way to parse that in terms of locations, whether it's maybe it's a heat map, right? In terms of the system map now, all the lines are in service, I think, right? So
yep.
that
Yes,
might
sir.
be one way of kind of looking at it rather than just the data points on the circle.
And yeah, certainly not trying to get into the data analysis right here, Commissioner Rouse, but we can certainly go back and slice the data that way by location specific events and kind of talk about that maybe at the next meeting, or if there's an opportunity for another work session to kind of go through that with the commissioners.
Yeah, because it gets into I see what you're trying to do, and I do appreciate it. Right, we're trying to see, are we trending in the right direction? And the expectation is when we start add a new line to the mix, if you will, you should see a spike at first, and you should hopefully see a trend down. And at the end, with all the lines in service, you should know where your bad actors are in terms of specific locations. But it's hard to get there from just the line colors at the moment. But I see where you're going with it, and I think it's the right approach. It's just how do we kind of parse through the information and get to where we want to be, right?
Yeah, roger that. Thank you, Commissioner Rouse.
Any further questions?
I see no further hands.
I have one more question on the overruns, and that is you gave a lot of total information, but do you have rate information, and in particular longitudinal rate information to show changes with time?
I do have the information spread out like that on different charts, Chair Hart, within the slide deck that are the charts that I have in the spreadsheets. However, that was not presented today, but again, we can certainly take that as a homework assignment and put together another presentation and either put it into the meeting slide deck for next time, or come back to the commissioners for a work session to discuss this specifically.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing about that, not necessarily as we speak, but I just wondered, do you have a general sense of whether the rates are going up, down, or staying the same, or what? I don't know if you have based on what you know so far, what do you have a general sense of?
Yeah, so for the red line, the rates continue to trend in the good direction. So they are going down. The green and yellow lines never really saw that spike that Commissioner Rouse was speaking of. They had a couple weeks where they may have ticked up, but they've continued to match kind of the status of where the red line is now. But the blue and the orange and the silver, and taking the blue out of the equation for orange and the blue, orange, and silver, it's really the orange and silver lines that continue to trend kind of in the wrong direction. They continue to experience the larger number of overruns in the current time frame.
Okay, again, I'm not looking for a complete answer as we speak, but yeah, if you could gather some of that information, I'd be interested to see it.
Absolutely, Chair Hart.
So are there any other questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Smith?
See no other hands.
Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next subject, which is safety event investigations. We will hear the presentations on all of the reports and then consider a single motion on all of them together, unless any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group, in which case we'll take it out, consider it as a single vote, but please indicate that at the end of the presentation. Mr. Quigley, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. In 2024, Metro Rail reported 25 improper door operations safety events to the WMSC. 12 events as of September 1st, 2024. As of September 1st, 2025, we have 27 improper door events that have been reported, eclipsing the year-end total for 2024. Let's see, starting in December of 2023, following the completion of Metro Rail safety certification activities, Metro Rail received WMSC concurrence to activate the automatic door operations, or ADO, on the Metro Rail system in increments, starting with the red line. By June 2024, the WMSC concurred that Metro Rail may activate ADO on all Metro Rail lines. The first 4 events discussed today occurred while trains were required to operate in automatic door operation mode. Direct causes of improper door operations can include human error, such as pressing a button to open doors on the wrong side, or opening doors when all train cars, and therefore all train car doors, are not fully berthed on the platform, or mechanical defects. The causes of and contributing factors to the improper door events I will present include loss of and lack of focus and situational awareness, non-compliance with written operational rules and procedures, including those related to door operation and station servicing procedures, and also fatigue leading to human error. Investigation Whiskey 391 is an improper door operation event that occurred on Friday, November 1st, 2024 at Bethesda Station when the train operator of a Red Line train 138 opened train doors with 4 cars outside the platform limits. At the time, Red Line trains were beginning to bypass Bethesda Station due to an escalator outage. Train 138, an 8-car Consus train, was the first train instructed to bypass the station. The radio rail traffic controller instructed train operator to board any customers that might be on the station's platform. The train operator stopped the train near a small group of customers, 331 feet short of the 8-car marker. A review of closed-circuit television footage showed that the train operator exited the operator's cab without turning off the train, manually opened the door on the lead car to allow riders aboard, and returned to the operator's cab. As the train operator was about to close the doors, a rail supervisor stepped off the train and manually opened the door to allow customers to exit the train. This action by the rail supervisor was not coordinated with the train operator. In an investigative interview, the train operator stated that when they noticed the supervisor, they quickly reopened the doors using the push button, thinking the rail supervisor may have been stuck in the doors. After reporting the event, the rail supervisor contacted the rail traffic controller and requested foul time to enter the roadway to conduct a ground walk around. The rail supervisor then took over train operations and was instructed to allow customers to reboard the train. There were several deficiencies identified during this safety event, including the use of governing documents that had not yet been finalized to make determinations on whether the stations should be bypassed or closed, and the premature opening of the station prior to the escalator restoration. During the event, the safety information officer contacted the operations manager and asked if Bethesda Station had been reopened. The operations manager replied that per Metro 1, they were once again servicing the station and asked if the safety information officer was monitoring the Microsoft Teams chat because that was where the decision was made. At that point, the escalators in the station had not been restored to full service. In the WMSC's 2025 audit of the Metro Rail Control Center and rail operations, the WMSC found that Metro Rail uses Microsoft Team chats during safety events, but it has not demonstrated a review of these records when determining the facts of those events. As a result, Metro Rail is required to review and include relevant information created by all available communication methods, including Microsoft Team chats. All communication methods must be preserved for future investigation review. Metro Rail must also make available all data related to rail safety events and investigations, which includes WMATA instant messaging chats and channels that relate to the investigation of a safety event, as outlined by the WMSC program standard. I'll stop and pause for any questions on this one.
Any questions from any of the commissioners?
Vice Chair Lobby has his hand raised.
Okay, please, Vice Chairman Lamy.
Yeah, Mr. Quigley, this is an interesting incident here. What I couldn't understand is why is the supervisor keying open a door to let passengers off? I mean, isn't the operator in charge of that train, not the supervisor? Why is he doing that?
Not too sure because they were bypassing the station anyway because the escalator's out. So no one should have been able to exit the station. So that is a good question, Vice Chair.
Yeah, and I know there was a lot of confusion here and some mistakes made, but I think the supervisor who should have kept his key in his pocket, I think he initiated the whole confusion and the whole problem here. And I note that none of the corrections talk about the supervisor to let them know that the operator is in charge of the train and the operator should be taking care of these passengers and the supervisors shouldn't be interfering. And I think that's one of the issues here that WMATA should be looking at. Thank you.
Understood. Yes.
Chair, Commissioner Rouse has his hand raised.
Yes, please.
Yes, thanks. I want to second that because I had the same exact thought, and it kind of reminiscent of what we saw in the old control center where you had supervisors, that were stepping in where other people were supposed to be functioning and doing their job. right? And it's kind of same situation. Why were they? I mean, were they on the radio? Did they know what was going on? I assume, Mr. Quigley, correct me if I'm wrong, but if they're going to do something like that, so there's circumstances being what they are. There's passengers there. They're just trying to get them on the train, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So in that circumstance, did they pull all the way up to the 8-car marker, or they just stopped where the passengers were?
They just stopped where the passengers were.
Okay. So it's an odd scenario to begin with, because I don't think they really trained for this. But either way, I think the operator's trying to do the right thing. They keyed out one controlled door, which is theirs.
Right.
And this other person randomly decided to do. Were they part of the radio communication, or were they not? But either way, to Vice Chair Lobby's point, it's just that's not how you're supposed to operate, right? The operator is in control of that train until somebody relieves them of that duty, and so nobody else should be doing anything. And even getting off the train when it's in a controlled situation like that, those of us who work on railroads, you have 3-step protection or something similar, where you have to confirm with the engineer, the operator, whoever it is going to be, that you are able to get off and step off safely. So just because you have a key in your pocket doesn't mean you should be opening doors at any point, unless you know from talking to the person who's in charge of that train that it's safe to do so. So that struck me as strange as well. And I wonder how often supervisors are doing things like that versus letting the operator do their job, and that's control that train until they're relieved otherwise.
Right. Okay.
Any further questions from Mr. Quigley on this one?
No other hands, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Quigley, please proceed.
All right. Whiskey 392 occurred on December 13th, 2024 at Rockville Station when the train operator, who had properly berthed the train at the station's 8-car marker, opened train doors on the non-platform side of the train. The train was operating in automatic door operation mode, and all train doors opened on the platform side except the doors on rail car 7098, which remained closed and had previously been isolated. The train operator then manually activated the right door open push button, opening train doors on the non-platform side of the train. The train operator closed the doors approximately 12 seconds later and reported the event to the radio rail traffic controller in the control center. The radio rail traffic controller instructed the train operator to offload the train and complete a ground walk-around. Train operator stated that an alarm appeared on the train control display, which confused them. In response, they inadvertently depressed the door open push button on the non-platform side of the train. The train operator also indicated that they were unaware that the isolated car would activate an alarm following door operation. In accordance with Metro Rail policy, the train operator was removed from service for post-event toxicology testing, and the train was removed from service for inspection. I'll stop on this one. Vice Chair Lobby has his hand raised.
Thank you again. What's this alarm? I read about the alarm that apparently occurs whenever you have a car isolated. What's the alarm for? What's it supposed to tell the operator?
The alarm is telling the operator that the doors did not open on that car. So it will give you the car number and then what doors did not open. So because this car was isolated, the operator would see that notification on their TCD screen.
So if there's a car that's isolated, that means that the system really doesn't work for the rest of the train, does it?
No, just that car. It's still train on.
So in other words, if you cut out a car, you basically cancel the function of that alarm, meaning that it's meaningless. Do you need to know that the doors aren't opening on other cars, or does that not matter?
So are you saying because they isolated the doors on that car, then the alarm should also kind of be deactivated as well?
Well, I mean, if you have an alarm and the alarm means that the doors aren't opening somewhere, but if you have a car cut out, the alarm comes on every time. That means that you don't have any indication that the doors aren't opening on other cars that may not be cut out. Does that make sense?
No, you would still get that notification on other cars.
But you only have one alarm, or is it an alarm from an individual car?
Their TCD screen basically has their consist. So little rectangles, and then each and Mr. Dorenzo might be able to follow up with me on this. Each that car will kind of highlight in red.
Okay.
And they can click on that and open it up and see what the alarm is.
Okay, so
stating.
you can see the individual cars, which one's
Yes,
not
yes, I'm
operating.
sorry.
Okay, that's fine, then that takes care of that issue. I had one other question. In your opening, you talked about this one thing that Metro is doing when they have these door issues is they're emphasizing this point and call method. And this is the method where they point and talk to themselves about, the actions that they're taking. And I think it's a very powerful method, but my question was, is this mandatory that the operators use this system, or is it just another hint for them to help them in their work? Or do they have to use the point and call method?
I believe it is mandatory, and I don't know if Mr. Walker is on to confirm that or not, or maybe Sharmella.
Yes, I'm turning my camera on now as we speak. So yes, it is mandatory that they use the point and call.
And do they
Vice
do
Chair
it?
Lobby.
Do they do any oversight of that? Do they have like supervisors checking to make sure that they're doing this, or is it just?
WMATA does have compliance that they are checking for this. I will just say yes to that. I don't know the level of how often they do it, but they do compliance checks for this.
It
Okay,
may be the
that's
sort of
good.
thing that
So it
we
is-
can
it is
also
required.
do some inspection of.
Thank you.
And Chair.
Further questions on that one?
Rouse? Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna say Commissioner Rouse also has raised his hand.
Okay, please.
Yes, thanks. On this one, and Mr. Quickly, help me out from an operations perspective, because it may be unique circumstances on WMATA, especially if there's a long layover. But is there no brief between crews when a train set that's in service for the day, one crew notices an issue, writes it up? Is there no transfer of that knowledge? Is there a mechanism for that, and they just didn't do it, or just there really isn't?
And I'm assuming you're referencing the isolated door. The operator should have known that the door.
Yeah. Is there like a brief between the crews to say, hey, you're taking this train over, car 7531 is cut out because the doors. I mean, that's what I'm used to in terms of a turnover, but I do know they lay over for quite some time at some of the ends sometimes without going back into service. So
Right. So
perspective.
usually the control center is trying to remove the trains that have any cars that are isolated, at the end of their rush hour times. If they can get another train up from the yard and send one back, because obviously they would want 8 good cars instead of, having only 7 with one isolated. The terminal supervisor, if they're aware, they also make an announcement to that operator as they depart, when they give them permission to depart and tell them to verify their signal and speed commands. They would inform them that, certain car on their consist is also isolated for whatever reason, bodily fluids, hot car, cold car, whatever it might be.
But there's not necessarily a requirement that they brief each other before taking over, if there's even opportunity in some cases.
No.
Yeah. I mean, that seems like something where, there might be a better mechanism, especially for defects that you write up. I've seen other railroads. Obviously, we have a bunch of forms in the back of locomotives and things where crew will write up, this is the issue, but there's other hang tags that you can put on the throttle of the leading cab as well and say, these issues are open, that I noticed on the last run. And that way, everybody that's taking that train until it gets out of service and gets resolved knows that, there's door issue on car number 1. I'm just trying to think there's got to be a better mechanism than if somebody knows that there's a problem with that car, they let the next crew know versus.
Absolutely. Communication could definitely improve. I would say the operator in this should have reached out to the control center and said, hey, I got a car, not all my doors opened, and the control center has it on file right there in front of them and say, hey, that car's been isolated. You can continue.
Yeah, even that, exactly. Where a dispatcher or whatever they have can have it in front of them. So when the next crew gets there, it says, you're going to take this and, but be aware this is an issue that was cited by the last crew, car 71, whatever is cut out. So you're right. I mean, that's another way of doing it. But there's got to be some mechanism, because it sounds like right now that it's happenstance if that information gets transferred or not.
Right. They're not very proactive about it, passing that information.
Thanks.
Any further questions from any of the commissioners?
See no other hands.
Okay, please continue.
All right, Whiskey 393 occurred on December 21st, 2024 at Franconia Springfield Terminal when a supervisor reported an improper door operation to the button rail traffic controller in the control center. The terminal supervisor had received the report from a train operator who witnessed the safety event. An investigative review of data determined that the train operator entered the station's platform limits, stopping 56 feet short of the 8-car marker, leaving 2 doors off the platform. At the time of the event, the train was being operated in automatic door operations. However, without requesting the required permission, the train operator manually opened the doors using the door open push button to service the station. The data showed that the train operator entered into emergency braking and believed they were operating a 6-car consist instead of an 8-car consist. After servicing the station, the train operator exited the train. They stated during an interview that they had then noticed that 2 cars were off the platform but did not report the safety event. A rail supervisor was dispatched to the station and was granted foul time protection to perform a ground walk around in accordance with Metro Rail procedure. The train operator was removed from service. I did mention a mistake earlier. It was 2 cars, not 2 doors off the platform. So my error there. 2 rail cars were left off the platform limits. Any questions on this one?
See no hands, Chair.
Last one. Whiskey 394 occurred on December 29, 2024, when a train operator who had properly berthed their yellow line train at Pentagon Station's 8-car marker opened train doors on the non-platform side of the train by activating the right side door open push button. At the time of the incident, the train was operating an automatic door operation. After noticing the error, the train operator notified the rail traffic controller in the control center, who instructed the train operator to offload the train and perform a ground walk around. A rail supervisor questioned the train operator about the event before taking over operation of the train. The train operator stated that they had pressed the train berth button and hit the right door open button inadvertently while swinging their hand. During an investigative interview, the train operator stated they had 3.5 hours of sleep in the 24 hours leading up to the event, suggesting an increased risk for fatigue. As a result of these improper door operation investigations, Metro Rail implemented corrective actions, including rail traffic controllers making hourly announcements reminding train operators to operate in ADO as required and to utilize the point and call method when doors must be opened manually. Personnel involved in these events attended refresher training on applicable rules and procedures, including door operations and properly servicing stations. Metro Rail redistributed a personnel notice reminding all the train operators to utilize the point and call method. And Metro Rail's Department of Safety developed a rail vehicle operator outreach program to increase rule compliance regarding door operations. Thank you. This completes the presentation.
Any questions for Mr. Quigley?
Commissioner Rouse has his hand raised.
Yes, please.
Thanks. And this is more of a comment. When I review these, I usually highlight things in green that I like that they did correctly, right? And so for one thing, yes, your work is not in vain. We do read these things, so thank you for the write-ups. But I noticed in all but one of these, they at least did the right thing when they made a mistake, right? They radioed RTC and said, "Hey, look, I did this, took the right steps to get protection and make sure nobody was outside the train." So I don't want that to go without notice, because I do think we talk a lot about culture, and that's one of the most difficult things to get to is having people admit when they've done something wrong, right? Even if it's small, that's a big step in the right direction. So obviously one of them didn't quite get there and decided that they, somebody else found it and called them out on it. But I do appreciate that on the other circumstances, even though they made the mistake in the first place, they radioed in and took the right steps to make sure it was safe before moving the train again. So, and thanks for including that in your write-up too, because I do think we need to try to track those things and see culture-wise, are they doing the right thing when they're provided the opportunity to? So thanks again.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Mr. Quigley?
No other hands, Chair.
Okay. Next one, please.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0395 involves a person who was attempting to climb over a railing near a fair gate at McPherson Square Station and fell behind a parapet wall. A parapet wall is a permanent concrete safety barrier, in this case, separating the customer accessible platform area from a small area containing lighting, cables, and conduit. Investigative review of CCTV footage shows that the person entered the station's mezzanine before attempting to straddle themselves between the station wall and railing. The mezzanine level is elevated above the platform level where trains service the station. The person lost their grip and fell behind the parapet wall below. There was a fall hazard sign present where the person fell. At 3:05 p.m., a customer who witnessed the fall notified a station manager who reported the event and requested medical assistance. The fire department, Metro Transit Police personnel, and a rail supervisor were dispatched to the scene. An investigative review of audio demonstrated that Metrorail communications agent who requested emergency assistance correctly provided the station address closest to where the injured person was located. However, after the DC Unified Communications dispatcher indicated they did not have the same address listed for the station, the communications specialist provided the address at the other entrance of the station and clarified that there are 2 station entrances. The fire department personnel arrived at 3:24 p.m. Due to confusion with the address of the station, the personnel had to walk from one side of the station to the side where the person was located. The person was transported to a hospital to be treated for head and leg injuries. And I can pause here for questions on the first one.
See no hands, Chair.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, investigation Whiskey 0396 occurred on Tuesday, April 16th, 2024, when a tie remover, an inserter, or trip machine derailed while traveling in a convoy toward Ronald Reagan National Airport Station for scheduled track maintenance. The machine derailed as the equipment operator tried to negotiate an incline and curve while switching to an improper mode of operation. As the equipment operator began to negotiate the 4% incline on the 800-foot curve between Crystal City and Ronald Reagan National Airport stations, the unit began to lose traction propulsion. To regain traction, the equipment operator switched from travel mode, the required mode of operation, while transporting the vehicle, to work mode, where the unit is lowered closer to the track, allowing for increased stability and traction. After regaining power traction and continuing through the curve at speeds no greater than 5 miles per hour, the front wheel of the unit came off the track, causing the unit to derail, making contact with the third rail insulator and cover board before coming to rest. The equipment operator reported the derailment to the button rail traffic controller in the control center via phone. The equipment operator confirmed the derailment via radio to the radio RTC. At 1:31 a.m., approximately 7 minutes after the derailment was reported, the radio RTC inquired with the RIC if there were any injuries. There were no injuries reported as a result of the derailment. At 1:38 a.m., the roadway worker in charge notified the radio RTC that the unit contacted the third rail, which had already been de-energized due to the area being part of a work location. At 3:25 a.m., a prime mover was sent to re-rail the trip machine. Power personnel were dispatched to the scene to inspect the damage to the third rail before power was restored. The unit was re-railed and towed to Alexandria Rail Yard after a track inspection had been performed. As a result of this investigation, Metrorail created, completed, and closed an equipment configuration change to increase the displacement and torque on the hydraulic drive motors. Installation was completed on the trip machines TR04, 05, 06, and 07. And I can pause here if there's any questions on that one.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners?
Sir Lobby's raised his hand.
Yes, Commissioner Lobby.
Yes, thank you. Was it appropriate for the gentleman to change from work mode or change to work mode? Is that an appropriate option?
Right.
for him?
So at the time, we found during this investigation that they would switch if they couldn't get through an incline or through a curve. They would switch from travel mode to work mode, which they were not supposed to do. And that in this case, that caused a derailment. But what they realized that they had to make that equipment configuration change in order for these prime movers to be able to make it through in travel mode.
So the change to work mode didn't cause the derailment. Is that what you're saying? Did
It
not?
did. It did cause a derailment, but it also showed that the unit wasn't really prepared to get through on its own on the way that it was designed.
So how can it cause a derailment? 5 miles an hour? Just trying to, I know they lowered it a little bit, but how did it cause a derailment to be in work mode?
I think Mr. Dorenzo can help us out.
Yeah, I believe it changes the way the suspension moves. So the movement through the on the incline, in work mode, it changes different, operates differently than when in travel mode. So the suspension, I'm not sure if it's not as compliant, but it allows
Probably stiffer or something.
I think it allows the wheel to climb if you go too fast.
Okay, so this goes back. We've talked about certification of new equipment and how in this case, when they bought this equipment, they should have made sure that it could negotiate the curves and the grades that they have on the system. And apparently that wasn't done, or they wouldn't have this problem now. So, a good certification program that looked at the system and looked at the equipment that was being purchased and measuring these things, I think, would prevent issues like this. But it seems to me if the guy decided to go over to work mode, this is probably a fix that everybody at Metro that works with this equipment knows about as a way to get out of trouble when you're stuck on a hill. So I have a hard time faulting that individual for taking that action, even though it didn't turn out for him in this case. Thank you.
Any further questions from the commissioners?
Commissioner Conklin has his hand raised.
I had the
Yes,
same
please.
question as Commissioner Lobby, but I was curious, what should they have done? If they're stuck on the hill, is there some other action they should have taken?
Yeah, at the time there really wasn't any other option. I think that's what we learned through the interviews
Okay.
is a lot of the operators were just switching to work mode to try to get through those areas.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Any further questions?
See no other hands.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
The final two investigation reports pertain to collisions near Minnesota Avenue Station in March 2024 that involved roadway maintenance machines. The investigations determined several causes and contributing factors, including a previously damaged emergency trip station and post, failure to mitigate a known hazard, and lack of policy, procedure, and supervisory oversight. Investigation Whiskey 0397 involved two roadway maintenance machines that struck an emergency trip station or ETS box at Minnesota Avenue Station within minutes of each other while traveling in a convoy from Shady Grove Rail Yard to New Carrollton Rail Yard. The first collision occurred at 1:31 a.m. on March 19th when BR04 struck an ETS box and post on track 2. The equipment operator was unaware of the collision, and it was only discovered during investigative review of CCTV footage regarding the second collision detailed below. As a result of the collision, a pole that is part of the ETS structure was left leaning forward, encroaching onto the roadway. At 1:36 a.m., PM50, which was part of the same convoy, struck the same ETS structure. This collision caused more extensive damage, including the dislodgement of the ETS and damage to a fence and staircase handrail at the end of the station's platform. An investigative review of documents showed a work order created October 3rd, 2023, to replace a damaged handrail at that location. The repair had not been made at the time of this event. After being notified of the collision by the flagman on attached flat car B406, the equipment operator reported the unit may have struck something to the control center and requested an absolute block to go back to Minnesota Avenue Station platform to perform a track inspection. Additional damage was identified to posts and cables and scratches found on the flat car. There was no damage to the track. The second investigation, Whiskey 0398, occurred on March 22nd, 2024, when a flat car on locomotive prime mover LPM 51 struck the temporary wooden handrail that replaced the metal handrail previously damaged during the collision that occurred on March 19th, 2024. LPM 51 was traveling from New Carrollton Rail Yard to Greenbelt Rail Yard on March 22nd, 2024, when the collision occurred. During the investigative interview, the flagman stated that LPM 51 made contact with the wooden staircase handrail twice, causing the step bracket on the unit to detach. The flagman notified LPM 51's equipment operator of the collision, who did not report the collision to the control center until approximately 18 minutes later. The equipment operator requested permission to conduct a ground walk-around. Emergency response team personnel conducted track gauge measurements and track inspection, and the track was deemed safe. The investigation determined that the temporary wooden stairs and handrail installed following the March 19, 2024 event were too wide and encroached onto the roadway. The damaged wooden railing was replaced with temporary fence netting and later replaced with permanent metal railing. Metrorail conducted toolbox talks with personnel and developed a lessons learned detailing the event and modified their protocol when there are any modifications that may impact the dynamic envelope. The protocol now requires engineer drawings showing the maximum and minimum clearance requirements specific to the area, that the installation be performed in accordance with those engineering specifications, and that the post-installation verification be conducted by engineering to confirm compliance. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Any questions from the commissioners?
See no hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm not clear from my record what is next. Is there another report next, or are we moving?
No, sir, we can move on to the vote.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the investigation reports that have just been presented collectively? That's Whiskey 0384 through Whiskey 0390. Is there a motion? Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
There, the vote is unanimous, 5 yeas to 0 nays. Just as a correction, I realized that the numbering changed. Today, it's Whiskey 391 through Whiskey 398. Those reports are adopted as presented. Thank you.
Thank you for that correction. Is there any other business that the commissioners would like to address? Hearing none, I would like to thank Dr. Meyer and his staff for their ongoing efforts to continually improve the safety of Metrorail, and in particular, the report that they gave on what we were able to vote on today because of all of the hard work, not only hard work by the public to comment on what is working well and what isn't working well so that we can collaborate better, but also the work of the staff to take into account all the corrections that were suggested and put them effectively to make them available for this vote today. That was a lot of hard work by a lot of people, and I appreciate all that we have seen to help make Metrorail safer. I'd also like to thank the staff, obviously, for the presentations during this meeting. The commissioners have been very engaged in their process, and I want to thank them as usual. And finally, I would like to thank the members of the public who attended this meeting. We appreciate you joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Our next public meeting will be October 21st, 2025. Meanwhile, I would like to remind you that you can always report any safety concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, and through our social media channels or by email. Any further business from any of the commissioners? Hearing none, this public meeting is hereby adjourned.